Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2,
You're going to
3.
be here later. Paul? Ross?
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Finance Committee meeting this evening. We have one item on the agenda for this evening. There was a typo on the notice. The notice says to amend the 2023 budget. It's really to amend the 2022 budget. It's proposed ordinance 24, 2022. Has everybody seen the revised that was handwritten on by Beth? She will not be here this evening. I've been going back and forth with her. The money is there. I double checked with her, making sure the funds were there for the ordinance. Does anyone have any questions about, and I'll try to answer the best I can,
About that?
about, yeah, adjusting the 2022 budget? Okay. Members of my committee is myself, the chair, Dean Holland, and Amy May, and my alternate is Cheryl Ramos. Does anyone from the administration have anything to add to the request from the ordinance 24, 2022?
Nope.
Does it need passed this evening?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to add ordinance 2422 to tonight's agenda on first reading.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take a vote. Mrs. May,
Yes.
Mr. Holland?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. We will add proposed ordinance 2422, 2022 to the agenda this evening, and recommend suspending the rules and passing on first reading. Is there any other issue of the Finance Committee? Yes?
When are we gonna go over the sale agreement for the ladder truck?
That's,
That next time?
no, that proposed is here. Did you,
Yeah, you should have.
okay, the proposed that's here.
You can address that tonight if you
What
want.
would you like to ask about it? I have it to put on for first reading. What questions did you have?
Oh, it isn't on the agenda.
Neither is
Yeah.
2023. She missed both of those, and I will add them to the agenda this evening.
Oh,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
Julie and I
Yeah.
have already discussed that.
I missed that.
That's okay.
So I do have a question on the ladder truck sale agreement, only just a note. So we're selling it, yes.
Correct.
And, which is great, and it said we had to fix it. We were told we had to first we were told we had to get a new one because the other one was getting really hard to fix. So it was put out to bid and it was sold. And then we were told, that we had to fix it to sell it, and then the sales agreement says as is. So I had a question about that.
Well, when I spoke to the fire chief this morning, the agreement with the
Grant County, Kansas.
Kansas, they wanted the pump fixed, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I did speak to the chief about this. So they are going to have the pump fixed with no other items fixed on the vehicle for the sale. The importance of a sale is they are going through a change of the county administrators. So they want to send us a check for 50% of it now, and then balance when we deliver the vehicle. I think it's very good on our part to get that kind of money for that. So that is the recommendation from the administration and the fire chief to try to pass this, or put it to pass as an emergency, so they'll send that check for the year 2022 to us.
So I still have that question on Article 6 on this agreement.
Okay?
It says sold as is. So
It will be
they
as is.
changed it, or changed the agreement, or I'm
It'll be
just trying
sold
to
as is
understand.
when they have that pump fixed. That is how it will be sold as is. Nothing else will be corrected on the unit.
The part's been ordered for months. It still has, it's supposed to get here hopefully in January. And then they will put this replacement pump on it. And then it'll be, sent out west. But that was
Okay.
part of the deal, is that we, because of this part being ordered, and that's the.
And it was already ordered, is that what
Yes,
you were saying?
it was
Already
ordered
ordered.
before any of this started. But then when we started to realize that anytime something breaks on this truck that we currently have, it's gonna be sitting there and not able to use it for months on end because, you know, the place that built it's no longer in business. The place that refurbed it, I don't think is in business anymore. So it's one of those that, you know, you got a Nedsel sitting over there.
Okay, so what they're sold as is just means that we were expecting the pump and it to be in the pump. So that's the as is.
It'll be fixed, yeah.
Okay.
They're not gonna, they don't want a broken truck,
Well, no, that's
Not-
why when I
not for that
saw
kind
this,
of-
I'm like,
not for that
That's
kind
to
of
say,
money.
if they get it there and the door's broke, Cheryl, we're not responsible to fix that door.
right, I read the rest of
That,
it.
that wasn't a term and condition of the sale. The part was ordered before
Yeah.
the truck.
Right, that's what he just said.
Okay.
So that's the as is, the part was already ordered and it was gonna be replaced. Okay,
You good with that? then?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the Finance Committee?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Meeting adjourned at 6:51.
instead
No,
of
that's
having
that's how we do amend it.
I'm going to call to order the zoning and annexation committee meeting. On the committee is myself, the chair, and Jim is excused, and Dan Lanzer and alternate Mitch Pace. And we're all three sitting on this side. Okay, so the purpose of the meeting tonight is to consider proposed resolution 39, 2022, annexing parcels 25-01887-00 and 25-01989-000 into the city of New Philadelphia, and to consider proposed resolution 40, 2022, and that resolution states what services the city will provide to these properties. The Planning Commission approved this annexation in March 2022, and the reason we're getting now is it takes time to wind through the process, and the county commissioners have recently approved this annexation. All council and administration have been provided with the documents accompanying this petition to annex in. So I'll start with the first one, the annexation of the property, Resolution 39, 2022. Does the committee have any questions, comments? Everybody knows where this, you saw the map that is sent out? Okay. Administration?
We have none. Like you said, it was approved by Planning Commission in March of this year.
And you had already sent the letter about the services.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody from council have any questions, comments? Yes.
Curious, if it was approved in March, why did it take so long to get to us?
Well, the paperwork had to work its way through, there's a process, then it had to make its way through the county commissioners. And it just got there in November. We just got the paperwork a couple of weeks ago. I mean, we had to wait till we got, they gave
Understand. permission
to, et cetera, et cetera. So
Thank
that's
you.
why it seems like it's like really long.
Does this need to be passed on emergency?
Not this one, because we have to have 3 readings for annexation, and we
Okay.
have to have a public hearing.
Okay.
So that won't be. Now, the second one is the provision of municipal services. And so my question to you, Marvin, is do we need to pass this tonight? The services, the water, sewer, et cetera, et cetera?
Technically, that's supposed to be passed before anything else happens, but we didn't get that at the right time. I would recommend passing it tonight.
Okay.
By statute, you're supposed to do that. We haven't done it for years. It was something I started doing.
Okay.
The commissioners did have what Ron gave them, and that likely satisfies. It's just as a matter of procedure, I feel better if we do it rather than not do it.
Yeah, because the letter was in March that Ron sent.
Right.
Yeah, so, okay, so we need to suspend the rules and pass resolution 4022 about the services tonight. Okay, any questions from the committee? You already asked one, any more?
Nope, I move that we add resolution, proposed resolution 40, 2022 to
Wait.
tonight's agenda and pass on first
I
reading.
haven't finished all my
Oh.
questions, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, administration, have any about the services?
No?
Any
we can
comments?
provide 'em.
Rest of council? Public? Okay.
Okay, now I move to add proposed resolution 40, 2022 to tonight's agenda And we'll be asking council to suspend the rules and move pass on first reading.
I'll second.
Okay, I'll take a vote. Okay, Dan,
Yes.
Mitch,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we will have that on the agenda for tonight, recommended to suspend the rules and pass on first reading 4022. Okay, so now we'll go back to Resolution 39, 2022. That's the annexation of the parcels. So do I have any motions on that?
I'll make a motion to add resolution 39, 2022 to tonight's agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll take a vote. Mitch,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that would be added to the agenda tonight. Okay, and we'll arrange for the public hearing for 30 days?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And, okay, so there are no other matters to be considered by the committee. Any other matters to come before the committee? Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Did, Madam Chairman, I didn't know if you wanted to, if there were any other matters. I saw there were some people in the audience. I didn't know if they wanted to address your committee or not.
She asked.
Oh, she did ask? I'm
She asked for
sorry.
the
Yeah.
public. Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry.
Any matters, yeah, it
Yeah,
said
she
it,
did.
yeah. Thank you.
This meeting of New Philadelphia City Council will now come to order. Would you please rise and remain standing for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to point out before prayer what the mayor had pointed out in his report from Luke 2:8-14. And there were shepherds lying out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone all around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly a great company of the heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." Let's pray. Dear God, thank you so for this evening, the opportunity to serve you through this meeting representing the community of New Philadelphia. We thank you, Father, for placing us in these positions. We know, Lord, that you're the one that's responsible for putting people in positions of authority. And we pray, Father, that we would represent you in the decisions that we make. And in those decisions, Lord, it would bring honor and glory to you. We praise you, dear God, and we thank you for this time of year that we can celebrate the birth of your Son. We pray these things, dear God, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Again, everybody, welcome to our council meeting. All those watching by streaming, we welcome you to our council meeting as well. Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Present.
Mr. Lanzer.
Here.
Mrs. May.
Present.
Mr. Pace.
Here.
Mrs. Ramos.
Here.
Mr. Ricklick.
Present.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Let it be known that Mr. Stoughton-Wright and Mrs. Gundy are excused from our council meeting this evening. Everybody's had a chance to review the agenda. Do we have any additions to the agenda tonight? Mr. Ricklick?
Mr. President, I ask that we add ordinance 23, 2022, 24, 2022, and resolution 38, 2022 to tonight's agenda.
Do I have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Are there any other additions to the agenda tonight? Mrs. Ramos?
Mr. President, I move that resolution number 39, 2022, and resolution 40, 2022 be added to the agenda tonight.
Mr. Alonso, second, all right, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
All right, any other additions to the agenda this evening? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda with the additions. Mr. Ricklick, need a second? Mr. Pace, thank you. In discussion by council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, everybody's had a chance to review the minutes from our last council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? All right, hearing none, entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Holland, need a second. Mr. Lanzer, thank you. Any discussion by administration? Council, roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
All right, thank you. correspondence. Ms. Courtwright.
To council and administration from Executive Administrative Assistant for the Mayor, Jamie Bailey, dated November 30th, 2022. This is the mayor's month-end report for the month of November. To council and administration from Auditor Gundy. This is dated December 1st, 2022. This is an email titled 2023 Budget with that as the attachment. To council and administration from Administrative Assistant to the Auditor, Heather Denham, dated December 5th, 2022. This is an email titled Month-End Reports with the statement of cash position with month-to-date totals and also the expense report with encumbrance details as the attachments. To council and administration from Brian Walker, dated December 5th, 2022. This is an email titled Update on Resolution to Support DNP as voted on. Two members of council from Stephen Shoemaker, dated December 5th, 2022. This is an email titled WDNP Resolution. To council and administration from Mayor Day, dated December 7th, 2022. This is an email titled Governor DeWine, Lieutenant Governor Houston announce new projects expected to create more than $202.6 million in investments. To council and administration from Paul Dybel. This is dated December 9th, 2022. This is an email titled Friends of the Homeless. To council and administration from Auditor Gundy. This is dated December 12th, 2022. This is an email titled Ordinance 24, 2022. It includes an addition that the auditor needs to make in the proposed ordinance. To council and administration from Mayor Day, dated December 12th, 2022. This is an email titled Friends of the Homeless Vacant Land Purchase Documents, and it contains a PDF of the land purchase documents that had been submitted to the Service Director's Office by Jeff Mathias. This email was replied to by Councilwoman Ramos. To Council Clerk from Treasurer Gerber, dated December 12th, 2022. This is the November 2022 deposits to the general account. And to Council and Administration from Mayor Day, dated December 12th, 2022. This is the mayor's report. And that concludes correspondence for this evening, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Ms. Courtwright. We'll move on into our administrative reports. First up, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members, fellow administrators, and guests. A couple things I want to highlight from the report I sent to you earlier today. Last week, we learned that the Ohio Tax Credit Authority approved a 10-year job creation tax credit for crane carrier Battle Motors to help with the company's expansion. Battle Motors project was one of 14 projects recommended to the OTCA by Jobs Ohio and its regional partners. If the company reaches its goal of 434 full-time positions, generating $18 million in new annual payroll, it could mean $270,000 in additional income tax revenue for the city of New Philadelphia. Recently, I met with officials from Jobs Ohio and Team NEO, the county's regional economic development partner, to ask that they also assist other manufacturers in New Philadelphia with their expansions and workforce development. And City Airport Commission Chairman Don Kennedy has started a fundraising effort to pay for the restoration of the old airport beacon light. It was replaced earlier this year when the city used an FAA grant to relocate a new beacon at the top of Tech Park Drive Southeast. Chairman Kennedy wants to restore the beacon to its original working condition and mount it for display at Harry Clever Field. Buckeye Career Center students will be doing the work. If you'd like to donate to the effort, just contact the mayor's office. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Any questions for the mayor?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor Day. Move on to Service Director, Mr. McAbeer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. I want to give a quick update on Park Lane. At the last meeting, all the 12-inch line was put in on Park Lane. Testing came back fine on that. So we went down to Lakeview, did the tack from the 12 to the 6. Got it bored underneath North Broadway. So now that section is being tested now. It'll pass tomorrow, I'm sure, from the chlorine and everything. So then we'll open cut. There's roughly 900 feet there to make that. If we remember right, there's an area there that does not have service by 6 inch. So we'll make that connection in the next couple of weeks. They may be in a week, I'll further update as we go along. But everybody on Park Lane now is hooked up and connected to the new 12-inch line. The other line has been disconnected from our line. So hopefully by the next meeting, I'll have a update and that job will be completed. I think if everybody's been out there, it's been paved. Park Lane has been paved, just in time, by the way. Newton's is getting ready to close down, so, but it is paved. That's the final coat that's out there now. Also, general service continues to pick up leaves. The entire city has been picked up once. Now it's going around and picking up piles, so I really look for it to be done before Christmas. They've been working the last couple Saturdays. It's been nice. Be able to get a couple crews out and keep moving, so it's worked out well for them. And again, next meeting, since it's after Christmas, I'll have an update on that also. That's the end of my report.
Yes, questions, Mr. Bricklick?
Mr. McAbeer, the water line on North Broadway, is it going any direction north?
Yes, there's two sections stubbed out, above, Lakeview,
Okay,
approximately 60-something feet there.
that's all you,
Yeah.
we'll have a fire hydrant at the end of that, or will that
Yes.
just be? Okay,
Yes.
all right, so there'll be two hydrants pretty close together right
Yes.
there. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Mr. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. McAbeer, are we set with salt for the winter season?
Correct. We did receive all that. It's all down, it's pretty loaded. I'd like to just go down and take a look. It looks good, and, knock on wood, we don't use much this year, right? But we'll see.
Amen to
Yeah.
that.
Yes, but it all got delivered.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. McAbeer? All right, we'll move on to the Safety Director, Mr. Popham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. First off, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but on South Broadway and Allen Lane, there's now a new strobe lit crosswalk sign that I think there may have been a few issues with it right after it was installed, but I'm hoping that they fixed it on Friday and it should be up and working. But what it does, that was one of the more darker crosswalks after the sun went down. And we did this kind of as a test to see if it works. I think one of the biggest things is I've been uptown and I've watched a half dozen people cross the crosswalk and not push the button. So, but it definitely will light up and get drivers' attentions. And we intend to expand on that later on in 2023. The next thing is I've invited the police chief, Mike Goodwin, and Captain Paul Rossi. Over the last week, there's a few councilmen that have made contact with the mayor and have had questions about numbers that were being put out in reference to the homeless shelter. So I thought that I would invite them this evening. If anyone has a question on anything, they're more than welcome to ask, or these are the two people that you would need to contact if you do have.
Any questions for Mr. Popham or Police Chief, Mr. Rossi?
They had something to share, right? Is that what you were saying? You have
I've got
numbers to
some
share?
facts and figures of, kind of quick gathering some information up on the number of calls we've had to the homeless shelter, both on the police side and the fire side, so I do have those. If you're interested and I can share them, if this is the right time and place, or we're gonna do this later. But I do have some information, I can certainly answer any questions that come up.
Any councilman have any questions on those? Want the chief to talk about those?
Could you
Sure.
share some of the, I know I'd called earlier to ask.
Sure.
So would you share?
I went back, I seen a email and it talked about the uniform crime report that the FBI puts out, and there was something that the violent crime had dropped since the opening of the homeless shelter. Did some research looking into it, and I looked at the FBI statistics, and It does, it goes in waves up and down, but there definitely was, it appears on the graphs that I have, there was an increase in either both violent crime and property crime. Not necessarily that it is tying to the homeless shelter, but there has been an uptick in crime. Since 2005, when we started keeping records, doing a search of the address of the homeless shelter, which is 211 East High Avenue, our department has responded 497 times. That is, again, off the cuff, looking what we have in our computer. A lot of our records, the way you search, it depends on how they put it in. Again, that was just a 211 East High. I could go back in and look to see if the dispatchers have plugged in, just listed it as the location of the homeless shelter. Those numbers may go up. I don't believe they will go down because of that. I think the fire service, when I talked to Assistant Chief Tharp, was 105 calls. Probably most of those were squad calls. Again, our calls to the homeless shelter can be from the very simple to check on something to a serious crime and everywhere in between. If we flesh it out and we dig into it, we can certainly break down the numbers of everything else if that is something in the future. We do background checks for the homeless shelter. Since this came to light, I want to say back in the summer, late summer, August, I've had the applications that when people apply to get into the homeless shelter, they have to fill out some information. We do a background check. My detectives start checking some records, and then they just ship that information back to the homeless shelter, and they do with it on their determination. I'm not really sure what, other than at one time years ago when I was a detective, sex crimes and violent felonies would not get in. I don't know if those are still the same parameters that they use, but this is the application since the middle of August through probably here in the last couple of days. Some, there's absolutely nothing on them. There's others that are, arrests for warrants and arrests for assaults, and then again, anything in between that we can certainly look at if need be.
Any other questions for the chief?
Chief, are you called if somebody is rejected? If they say, no, you've got a laundry list of items that you can't be in the homeless shelter?
We don't make that decision. We get it faxed to us, we do the background check, and we fax it back
And you're done?
to them, yes.
If somebody was rejected from the homeless shelter, I wonder if any of those names would come up maybe on another call to one of your officers.
We would probably have to do some digging to see if that's the case or if that is true. The only time that we really would get involved is if we run them and we find out or looking that there's a warrant for the person, that we would take them into custody. We would go over and kind of preempt, instead of them getting into it, we would take them into custody and do the warrant. We would have to do some digging to see if, and again, I don't know, maybe that would be better answered by the
I was gonna
homeless
ask
shelter.
whenever but I thought I'd ask you too.
Yeah, but I can't answer that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yes, Mr. Rickley.
Yes, Chief, how does the calls relate to other multiple rental dwellings, like large apartment complexes, compared to the homeless shelter throughout our city?
I don't know, that is something that we're going to delve into a little bit more. As I was sitting and looking at these today, again, this just kind of ended up on my desk this morning. I remember council's commitment last year on the nuisance calls that we were having at some of the motels on the other end. And I looked at those numbers. I don't remember, but I thought 497 was a pretty large number for calls that we've been answering. Again, they're
Well, I would just like.
from the
you to,
benign
like,
to serious, but.
I know, just down from where I live, the apartment complex there, I know that there's a lot of calls in the middle of the night, I hear them.
And it probably would compare in that same area.
Yeah, and that's what I just wanna see, how, would you, or is that something you are compiling for your, or is that something
Yes.
we can do? Okay.
Yeah, we can certainly find that by the address.
Okay.
And
I just-
again, that would be, the Atwood Terrace Apartments, that would be the 1811 East Highs, the places that we do go to on a regular basis of
Okay.
apartment buildings.
Just wondering. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you, Mr. Popham. We'll move on. Auditor's not here this evening. We'll move on to the treasurer's report. Mr. Gerber.
No report, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, law director, Mr. Fate.
Thank you, Mr. President. This past week, as you know, I'm looking for an assistant prosecutor. I interviewed 3 persons for the job. Got another application that day, and I'm anticipating at least one more. So I'm doing my due diligence, but I do have a favorite that I like, but I want to interview all of them before we make a decision. And as soon as I know, you folks will be the first ones to know. And beyond that, I also participated in arbitration hearing. If anybody wants to call for an executive session, I'm not going to call for one to know what's going on in that. I'd be happy to brief you on it because it's a personnel matter. But it's not concluded yet, but it's been 14 hours of hearing so far, so that's taken up a great deal of city time, and my time in particular. But beyond that, if you have any questions about any of those things or anything else, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for the law director? All right, thanks, Marvin.
Mr. President.
Oh, yes, yes. You okay? All right, we move into our board commission reports. Planning Commission, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning Commission will not meet this month. It'll meet again the second Tuesday of January at 1 p.m. here in the council chamber.
All right. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mr. McAbeer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board of Zoning Appeals will meet tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. here in council chambers with 3 variance requests to be heard.
All right. Any questions for Mr. McAbeer?
Also, I'd like to add, I'm sorry, Mr.
Sure.
President, that Michelle Leeser, that served on the board for many years, is moving out of the area. So we'll be adding Dave Heck will be added, and he will start in January. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McAbeer. Airport Commission, I know Mr. Seldright's not here.
He's not here, but we will be meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m.
Okay,
in the
thank you.
council chambers.
All right, thank you, Mr. Alonso. Park Board, Mr. Pace.
Thank you, Mr. President. No official report this evening, but I want to remind everybody that on December 18th, McInturf Realty is having their annual Christmas in the Park from 4 to 8. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. All right. All right, Mr. Holland, move on from the health board. We go into our committee reports. Finance, Mr. Brickley.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met this evening at 6:45 to discuss proposed ordinance 2422, the adjustment to the 2022 budget, permanent budget. It's pretty basic, cut and dry what the auditor has asked without her present here today. We voted 3-0 to send it to the agenda tonight and try to pass on first reading. Meeting was adjourned at 6:51.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Brickley? Now we move on to Public Works and Economic Development. Ms. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report this evening.
All right, we move on to zoning and annexation. Mrs. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met tonight, and we did approve annexation to go forward. And I won't read the parcel numbers, but we did approve that, unless you want to ask me. And then Resolution 40, 2022, we will be recommending that the rules be suspended and passed on first reading, because that has to do with the services, and there's time limits for that. But the first one, the annex has to be read 3 times, and there has to be a public meeting for that, and that will be scheduled. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Mrs. Ramos? Now move on to Cemetery Committee. Mr. Pace.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
All right, move on to Contact and Special Committee. Mrs. May.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
All right. All right, the floor is now open for visitor comments. Anyone wishing to address the council should rise, state their name, address, and address all comments to the chair. And we have a 5-minute time limit for on those, so I don't know who wants to speak first. Josh? Why don't you lift the microphone up, make sure it's on there,
It turns
Josh?
on.
It's on.
President Kemp,
Yes.
Council, my name is Josh O'Farrell. My address is 3899 Creekside Drive, Uniontown, Ohio, 44685. I've prepared some remarks this evening that may go a bit beyond 5 minutes. I would ask to be permitted to conclude my remarks. If someone needs to cede time to me, they're more than willing to do that.
Yeah, that's fine, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some of you I know, those who I don't, again, my name is Josh O'Farrell. I represent the Friends of the Homeless of Tuscarawas County. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. Those are the words of Mahatma Gandhi, one of the great humanitarians of the 20th century, a champion of human rights, and an individual who dedicated his life to enhancing the lives of the oppressed, the destitute, the homeless. A community is only as strong as the ability of its leaders, its elected officials, its business owners, its church leaders, to collectively confront and adequately address the challenges and issues with which that community is presented. And it is the manner in which those issues are resolved that reveal to all the foundational values upon which that community is built. Having grown up in this community, I was shaped by those values. And though we are ever evolving as individuals, those values instilled in me by this community, I carry with me to this very day. A work ethic learned at 14 years of age when I was told by my parents the day after my 8th grade year ended to walk down to my neighbor's house, Phil Sankar, and ask him for a job. I worked 10-plus hour days for the next 3 summers. A commitment to excellence instilled in me by my teachers from elementary school at Central School all the way through high school when I graduated in 2000. And an unapologetic desire and willingness to help those in need, something I witnessed members of this community do time and time again. Empathy is not enough, but empathy coupled with action, that is the true measure of a community's strength. And since 2005, this community has had a homeless shelter which has provided invaluable services to this community's most vulnerable. In terms of its residents, only those who have passed background checks performed by the New Philadelphia Police Department are permitted to stay. No sex offenders, no one convicted of any violent crimes. Residents are required to submit to random drug testing, and they must stay clean. At any given time, up to 1/3 of the residents of the shelter are children, as the shelter provides residence to families who, for a whole host of reasons, have found themselves without a home. 10% or more of the shelter's residents are veterans. 80% of the shelter's population are residents of Tuscarawas County. The overwhelming majority of the remaining residents come from Harrison and Carroll counties. Because the battered women's shelter in Harrison County is closed, many of those women attempting to escape violent environments find themselves at the door of our homeless shelter. It is our goal to assist those in seeking the help of the shelter to achieve stability, sobriety, and obtain permanent housing within 90 days of their admission to the shelter, to help these people get back on their feet and become productive and contributing members of society. The shelter is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Staff is always present. Our residents have a curfew. They're required to check in and check out. They contribute by undertaking daily chores. Those residents struggling with alcohol and/or drug addiction, the shelter ensures that they get the help that they need through counseling or other services. Each year, the shelter provides approximately 27,900 meals for residents, 5,700 meals for non-residents, and they prepare 1,100 food boxes for hungry citizens within this community. Since 2005, the shelter has provided over 175,000 free bed nights and over 500,000 meals to this community. Thousands and thousands of non-guest citizens of Tuscarawas County also receive benefits from the shelter in the form of food, blankets, gloves, coats, transportation, housing assistance, mental health referrals, substance abuse referrals, just to name a few. The services that this shelter provides to our community, they're invaluable, a reality recognized by Mayor Day in November of 2019 at the annual Friends of the Homeless Benefit Dinner, when he said the following: "One thing I really want to say to you is that I admire the people of New Philadelphia and Tuscarawas County because of how giving they are. When we see persons and families in need, we step up and help them. You don't see that in every community, but you see that in ours. I believe our willingness to do that comes from our deep abiding faith and love for each other and in God's creation. We must continue to strengthen that spirit as the world around us continues to change and present more challenges for us to undertake. Imagine our community without the Friends of the Homeless Emergency Shelter and the Pathway to Recovery Center. It would be a very different place, and not in a good way. As volunteers and supporters, you have accepted the challenge to provide the needs to help end homelessness and addiction in our county. The staff in the shelter and the family center could not do it alone. They need our continued support, guidance, and encouragement. They have days through the year when they question if they are doing the right thing and whether what they are doing is worth it. We all know that it is. We all know that they must be successful in their efforts to make a difference. Imagine yourself or a family member on the street. It could happen. Our lives take big turns that we've never expected. My guess is that very few, if any, of the people who have resided in the emergency shelter or the center planned to be there. No one decided one day that that's it. From now on, I'm going to be homeless. Or today, I'm becoming an addict. But thank God we live in a community where if it does happen, we have people and organizations ready to lift you up, put you back on your feet, and on the road to recovery. That's why I am so proud to be from New Philadelphia in Tuscarawas County, and am so grateful for the commitment made by the Friends of the Homeless and Pathway to Wellness to take care of others when others don't, and for assistance when others would not. Mayor Day's speech and his words of support for the Friends of the Homeless are so important. I've taken the liberty of downloading a video of that speech onto thumb drives, which I will provide to all of you at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. I thank Mayor Day for his support for the Friends of the Homeless, and I could not agree more with what Mayor Day said in November of 2019. The Friends of the Homeless do indeed need this community's continued support. And this would be a very different community if that shelter did not exist. That's why we're here tonight. We need your help. We need the city's help. We don't need your money. We won't burden any taxpayer as a result of the help that we seek. What we need is for New Philadelphia to approve the location for the construction of a new state-of-the-art shelter. That's it. The current state of the shelter is in deplorable condition. Construction of a new shelter is absolutely necessary. Earlier this year, the Friends of the Homeless identified property located within New Philadelphia's Central Business District as a potential location for this new shelter. That site was rejected by the city. And though I disagree with the city's position, as communicated in correspondence from Law Director Marvin Fate, the Friends of the Homeless have endeavored to identify a new location for the construction of this shelter. It is my sincere hope that this new location, 3 acres, located behind Preach the Word Ministries on Beaver Avenue Extension, as you head out of the city on 39, will receive the support of this city, and that any needed variances or modifications to the current zoning ordinances will be approved. There will undoubtedly be some who oppose this location. I understand that, we all do. And though East Elementary schools within this general vicinity, significantly, New Philadelphia City Schools fully supports the construction of this shelter at this location. The only concern Superintendent Wentworth has is ensuring that no convicted sex offender is permitted residency at the shelter. As previously communicated to you, it is the shelter's policy that it does not permit sexual offenders as identified on the background search conducted by the New Philadelphia Police Department. I will provide to all of you a copy of Superintendent Wentworth's letter voicing her support for this project. Some will argue that the value of properties around the shelter at this proposed location will be negatively impacted. Not so, according to Kathy Petro, who visited the proposed site and studied the property values of the nearby properties. A copy of Ms. Petro's letter indicating that the shelter will not affect the value of surrounding properties will also be provided to you. Last, I've spoken with business leaders within the community who overwhelmingly support this project. Emily Lane, the owner and operator of the area's Wendy's, and Greg Kimball of the Kimball Company have submitted letters of support, which I will provide to you. Kimball Company has promised to consider hiring those individuals from the shelter who become drug-free and pledge to remain drug-free, providing employment to assist those in need from their transition from homelessness to productive members of society. Members of council, the shelter has called New Philadelphia home since 2005. The state-of-the-art shelter the Friends of the Homeless now seek to build on Beaver Avenue Extension will cost $3 to $5 million, all of which will be obtained through private donations or funding through grants. It will cost this city nothing. It will cost its citizens nothing. We ask for this council's support, for this administration's support, to ensure that the Friends of the Homeless will continue to be able to provide invaluable services to the homeless and disadvantaged. The homelessness crisis is only getting worse. The strain that homelessness exerts on communities is only increasing. But the Friends of the Homeless will be your ally. They'll be your ally in this fight. And this shelter, a beacon of hope for those who have little more than hope. We look forward to working with you to make this project a reality. Be happy to answer any questions you have. I would like to briefly state that I've had the honor of representing this county in the opioid litigation. As we're all aware, this part of the country, Appalachia, has been ravaged with drug epidemic. First, the opioid crisis. Now we've seen methamphetamines come into this community and others like it at an alarming rate. I believe, and the data will show, any increase in crime rate is directly tied to the increase in drugs coming into the communities. Unfortunately, we have to ask ourselves, what will happen if those who rely on the services provided to residents of this community by the shelter are no longer there and can no longer be obtained? No coats, no gloves, no food. What about those people who rely on the shelter on a daily or weekly basis for a meal every night? What happens when those services are taken away? Do you think that will have a positive effect on the crime rate in this community? We know the answer to that question. We heard talks of crime rate in generalizations. I think that does no good whatsoever. If we want to talk about what it really is, we want to have a meaningful analysis, that's fine. I welcome that. But generalizations and painting one area of this community with a broad brush, that serves no good. We know what the effect the increase in drug and the epidemic has had on this community. We know what will happen if those services that our residents rely upon are no longer there. As Mayor Day said, the services provided by this shelter and the Friends of the Homeless are invaluable. Just imagine what our community would look like without it. It's time to act. It's time to ensure that there is a facility that will take care of this community's least fortunate many years into the future. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
I have a question. First, thank you for coming tonight and speaking on behalf of the Friends of the Homeless. I didn't know of the new location until maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. So my question is, what happened to the other location on the other, right beside WTZ, I think it was? Jeff, I don't know if you know that answer, Jeff. Jeff might know.
Jeff, you familiar with
Mr.
what?
Mathias.
Yeah, it's 2440 East High Avenue in Philly, and Jim Selden wrote a letter that he didn't want it there, and we had 40 signatures from people there who said they didn't want it there, and a lot of opposition, and wherever we go, we've got opposition. We've been working on it since July 1st of 2021. Then it was a great opportunity that Mr. Albert and Kate DiMatteo, that are sitting right back here today, said when they saw our article in the paper that this would be a great site. I never thought about selling before, and it's right behind the church on 327 Beaver Avenue Northeast. He's mowed it for 25 years, never thought of selling. We thought our cause was worthy and just got on the edge of town where Mayor Joel Day told me in July of 21 where he wanted us to be. And it's back in. Albert owns 5 houses around it, and he's like, hey, back here. And I said, that's great. I lived in New Philly all my life. I'm 66 years of age. All we try to do is, this is a great place. We're privileged to have the county seat here. I want everybody to be happy, but we also have to know we're all pretty privileged. Me home and I can turn on heat and we have something to eat. And this is going to be a great facility to help our people in Tuscarawas County give back. And I think this is a great location to do it in. And I appreciate Albert and Kay coming to meet Mr. Calvin White, who ran the center, and told him about it and got me involved. And I just think it's a fantastic piece of ground. And I talked to Miss Amy Wentworth, and we're concerned about the schools. My children, my kids graduate from New Philly and have grandkids and stuff there. And the situation is we do not let sex pedophiles or anybody in our center that way. We're not gonna let anybody in here in New Philadelphia is gonna demean or hurt our community. This is New Philadelphia. This is where I live. This is my family, Shorty Mathias, Paul Mathias, my mom and dad. Everybody lived here all my life. I lived here. We give back. And this is a location, but we have to help the people, the poor, the homeless, the needy, the widowers. Nobody wants it in their backyard anywhere, but we got to do something to help these people. And it's not like we're going to do a school levy, we're going to put a burden on our taxpayers. No, it's not. We're raising all the money from business people trying to get grant Mr. Brett Hillier got us a $300,000 grant, and we thought we were gonna be able to build it in February down across from Magoo's Restaurant and the airport hangar. That was voted down in May when we all went to the zoning board of appeal. I tried to do everything that the city's told us to do, trying to do Christian ways, do the things the right way, look out for everybody. And they said no there because it was in a business location, and there was a young girl there who was afraid that lived next door, and we said, so and you guys, and the zoning said no. They said there's no zoning in New Philadelphia for a homeless shelter, because when they wrote the rules and regulations, whoever thought there was a homeless shelter, okay? But Jack Ream is 92 years of age, he came back to this town and helped open that shelter right there in 2005 of what we've done for our people. You also know what that man right here has done, 92 years of age? We're the second largest food pantry in the United States, giving food out over at the old Dover Bueller's right there is what this man over here sitting, he's the guy we should be praising, who's helped these people. And all these volunteers that have given their time, effort, Paul and Mary Dybel here, all these different people have given their time. This just, man, Mr. Scott Clark right here just told me, he said, I was out and had nothing, the homeless shelter took me in, changed my life around. Right here, Mr. Clark said, thank you for the homeless shelter. People couldn't even get their driver's license. We got driver's license for them. There's 1,200 names in Indeed of jobs needed in Tuscarawas County right now in Indeed. And we can train these people back up, get them back and get them an apartment, and get them a place to live, and get them a job and feel worthy for themselves. And they don't want to be in this homeless shelter, but they said they're in our ball diamonds or in Miracle Lane Plaza or in our cemeteries. Well, we're already here in New Philly, everybody. So we're gonna build a bigger facility, we're gonna watch who comes in here, and we're gonna make it better, so they're not walking in our baseball diamonds, they're not in our cemeteries, they're not in Miracle Lane Plaza. We gotta help everybody in this, and this is what makes New Philadelphia great. We have the county seat here in New Philadelphia, that's why New Philadelphia is such a great community. And there's people that come in that, because of the court cases and everything else, but it's still a great community to raise our family, our kids, and our parents feel safe here. So this is going to be something that we tried to go, then we tried to go to Puritan Laundry to say it wouldn't work by Puritan Laundry. Everywhere we've gone, we've got opposition. We think, God willing, we've prayed about this for a year and a half. Reverend Joseph and Karen, Mike Pizzuto, all the pastors on our board, Steve Maston, all the Wendy's, all these people have given. I've only been working on this committee for a year and a half. I said I would take to build a new facility and be in charge of this. John Kelly, economic director here in Tuscarawas County, on the board, a pastor, okay? He has given since we opened in 2015. One thing I look at for all of us here today, 497 calls. They're not all bad calls, but that's 17 years. That's 29 calls a year is what that is. Our people are not saints, they're in the homeless shelter. But let's look at everybody. I have skeletons, I have people in my family who are not great. We all do, you know. I'm not the greatest person out there either, but we got to humble, we got to please God, we got to give back to the poor and the needy and the homeless. That's what it says in the Bible. And I think this is going to be an asset if we can amend the zoning. We're going to have opposition, build it on 3.5 acres, Albert K. DiMatteo mowed this ground, did all this work, and they're going to offer to us to buy and build a center that we're going to be proud of. 20 rooms for men, 20 rooms for women, 6 for families, and a bathroom. It's not any luxury room. It's 13 by 18 they get to live in with a restroom. Okay, then we got to get them counseled up. Mark Weldy over here, where Jim Patrick's office was, where Alvin Title used to be. He comes in and counsels our people. What a great job this man does, you know, or whatever, and helps all our people in this community, and helps these, he cares about these people, and he gets them back out like Mr. Clark right here. Perfect example, standing here that's back out, working in the community and cares about what's going on. Hey, New Philly is great, man. I love living here. Do you think I do want to do anything to tear down the community I've lived in all my life for 66 years? No, I don't. I just want to make it a better place. And I think all of us working together, we can do that. And that's why we're asking, I've gone at least 15 locations. Bill Marino had a property when they said it was Central Business District here May 26th next to Joy Manufacturing. Mayor Joel Day says, I'm working hard for Joy Manufacturing was to make that prosperous and everything else. I said, okay, Joel, I'll leave. I'm not going to go there either. But where can we go? You know, this is a property that came up that is back in there. There's a creek in Beaver Dam Creek. Of the 3.5 acres, probably 1.5 acres is in floodplain. We're gonna have 2 acres to build on, okay? But we're gonna build a very nice facility, 3 to 4 million, with 8 Days of Hope and all the Marlife, different people that Pro Via Door are willing to give to our homeless shelter and help us out and buy things at cost and donate. This is gonna be an asset to our community that we'll all can be proud of. And we can get those poor people that don't have anything, give them a second chance.
And importantly, 2 points. This property has never been developed before, and is not going to be developed.
I think there's a
Mr. DiMatteo and his wife have kindly stated to us that they will allow us to build this project, and this project alone. We're not interfering with any future development plans at this site. Second, construction of this homeless shelter, it's not going to eradicate the problem of homelessness. No one's saying that. There's still going to be homeless in our community. Unfortunately, that's always the way it's going to be. We can only help those individuals like Mr. Clark, who want to be helped. And those individuals who want to be helped deserve a place to go and deserve a place to receive that help they seek. Those are the success stories. And that's what this shelter does for those members of our community.
All right, thanks, John. Mr. Rickett?
Yes, I want to thank you, Josh, and I want to thank Jeff. Yeah, Jeff, you've done a lot for our community, not just this. You put your neck out on line for a lot of different things. This is more people who've been to council meeting the whole year that you brought with you. So I want to tell you, I commend you for that. More people need to get involved in our community, in our council, in the way we run our city. And you're right about it. We are citizens, and we owe them very much. But not everybody can take care of themselves here. I've seen a lot of people, different jobs I've had in the city, from water superintendent to buildings and grounds supervisors to my dad running a shoe store uptown. I've seen people have nothing, and I never understood my dad. He'd fix shoes for nothing or for 10 cents. The only reason he did it because people had no money. And what you want to do is right. We need to help our people. And I wish someone, instead of finding a way to say no, find a way to say yes to you guys. And so I'm on your side to find a way to say yes. And I'll go on record to say Kelly Ricklick says yes to the homeless shelter because it's our responsibility to help the people that need to be helped. They need a place to live. Kids coming to school, they don't have no place to live. I went with principal to go houses to pick the little girl up to take her to the school because she had no place. I was part of that, to give her something to eat. Why is it so hard to help? Homeless shelter is not the only problem we have in our community. Mental health is the biggest problem in our whole society. We dump people to the street and go find a way, and we're going to turn my back on you. I don't want to turn my back on anybody anymore. I want to find a way to say yes to everybody. So I'm one vote. My vote is yes. I hope everybody can understand, Jeff. I trust you. It's on a handshake what you're going to do with these people. You're going to watch over them. You're not going to allow it to be trashed. You're going to make sure the school is not hurt. Amy Wentworth, who I respect too, is in favor, and she's the one, it's her responsibility for the safety of our children in those school system. I take that as a handshake too, that she's going to maintain that. So, Josh, thank you. The group of people come here, thank you. It's Christmas time. I sure hope somebody will open up their damn heart and support you instead of find a way to tell you no and there's no place in this town for you. If I can help you find a place, I will, Jeff. And the rest of you. Thank you very much for coming. I support you.
Thank you, President. Again, thank you, Josh, and just for the record, that was Mr. Matthias talk. We should have given Jeff the mic down there so people that are listening, streaming, not, but people streaming,
Big
yeah.
enough mouth.
Yeah, but, I was gonna see if anybody else wanted to talk, but.
All right, go ahead, finish up.
Is there anybody else that wish, we've had Mr. Farrell and Mr. Matthias, anybody else? You know, we're trying to, 5-minute time to come over to the podium, would you please, or?
I had some questions before we got down.
Okay, all right.
before this gentleman speaks, is it okay if I hand out the materials I indicated that I would provide to all of you?
Tell you what, why don't you stay there a second, Josh? You had some questions, then we'll have speak.
I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, Mr. O'Farrell, but this might be better directed to Mr. Matthias. The city sent a letter to you in August where we offered a site that we would approve. And that was parcel number 7200006-000, located on East High Avenue, the former Twilight Drive-In movie theater. I know there's a big sign there for sale or lease. We indicated that we would assist in making sure that that got water and sewer. And that's actually 3.7 acres, and you indicated you can only build on 2 acres. I wondered whatever happened to that. That was something that we had proposed back in August, and then I never heard anything else about it.
And I'll let Jeff talk to that, but just so we're clear, is that one of the sites that was identified along with 5 other sites that were in Dover?
Yes, this one's in New Philadelphia. This one's
Yeah,
in
this
city
was
of
the
New
only site
Philadelphia.
that you identified in New Philadelphia, correct?
That's correct.
The other sites were 5 in Dover. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff, why don't you go up to the podium, Jeff, so that people can see you, and because there are people watching by streaming here tonight, so.
The only reason, you know, we looked at that site, but basically what it is over $425,000 for the site to even buy it, okay? And what Mr. and Mrs. Dementillo have is a site that's $200,000 less than that and is closer to town because we have our government services here in town. And we're only like 3 blocks from the county courthouse, right there where a lot of our social services are rendered. This way we'd have to bus them back and forth, plus it's not gonna be cheap to run the utilities. I sold that site one time to Kevin Wallach. Kevin Wallach sold it to LaCroix and Mr. Levengood, and now it was $125,000 I sold it for, and now they want $425,000 for it. And to burrow under the street and run utilities are not gonna be cheap. I know that's something there, but we also thought in our council meeting that's also where we're gonna have to have busing and taking the people back and forth. This location right here, which is great after looking for a year and a half, these people could even walk to their social services. It's only 3 blocks away. We're so much closer. We're close to Mr. Welty that does counseling right here, and it's only 2 blocks away. So this is just a real godsend right here, being able to have this site. That Mr. and Mrs. Dementillo, Albert and Kay has offered to us, and we have to raise the money. I'm not putting any burden on our budget to run this homeless shelter is $460,000 a year. These people, Calvin White that runs this, what he makes and what we pay our people, it's out of the goodness of their heart because they love people. Like Mr. Clark right here, getting him back in on, they're not doing this for money. They're doing this to help get, because they love people, servanthood, putting other people's interests ahead of their own. That's what we're all trying to do here. They're in this council right here. Do the Christian thing. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. We're trying to love our neighbors. They aren't as fortunate as we are. And we just thought it was too far out, and it was $425,000 compared to $200,000 less, and we're closer to town where you didn't have to pay for transportation. Thank you. Any questions?
All right, now, sir, you can, Josh, if you want to hand out your stuff, and
Thank you.
you can come up to the podium.
My name's David Moss. I live at 249 Forbes. In the neighborhood we're talking about, I actually can see the land from my yard. The big concern is this facility is bigger than the one they currently have. It looks to me from what I read in the paper, it may hold 70, 80 people or more. That's a lot of people to introduce to a residential neighborhood. We already have a heck of a time with the school traffic and things going on. Just a concern that it's going to make things very busy for us. I don't think anybody is against a new homeless shelter. I think it's needed myself. But as the one gentleman mentioned, the city has offered, 5 or 6 different locations. You know, we're just kind of curious at home why all of those haven't been looked at and exhausted first before they come down in, you know, to what is currently pretty peaceful.
All right,
That's all I have to
all right, thank you.
So somebody can have the rest of my 5 minutes.
Yeah, come on up to the podium, yes.
As far as that Albert Embeteel here, 165 25th Street, as far as that traffic goes, there's this unused street right there that leads right into the ground, which when everything is all done, they won't be using Fair Avenue at all. They're gonna be using the street in the back, okay? Ain't gonna hurt that a bit. And the only other thing I can tell you, because everything's already been covered, okay, is that where it is, leaves plenty of room for people to be outside and go around without bothering anybody, because there's a whole bunch of land there involved here, and he ain't gonna use near all that. I asked him who's gonna mow the rest of the grass, okay? Yeah. Okay. I don't know what else to tell you, except for on the 6:30 news today, I see where there's a whole bunch of more people crossing the Mexican border down there. And guess who's gonna keep them some of these days, okay? Okay? And the only other thing I can tell you is while the people staying at the homeless shelter for practically nothing, okay? Do you know how many people in Tuscarawas County is on metropolitan housing?
Do not.
620 as of 6 months ago. Okay, that's costing the taxpayer, everybody, big bucks, because rent is not cheap these days. Okay, so it'd be much better to keep them in the homeless shelter than to pay another $400, $500, $600 a month for somebody to live in an apartment, just storing them there. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Hey, yes, come on over to the podium.
Hello, my name is Angela England, and I live at 215 East 2nd Street in Dover, Ohio. I'm here to support the homeless shelter. I am also testimony of somebody who has completed the program. I started out as a drug addict. I lost my home, I lost my family, I lost everything. I went into rehab, and right after I left rehab, I went over to the homeless shelter. They gave me all the tools that I needed to start my life over again. Today I'm 18 months sober, and today I have my own apartment. Today I have my own apartment, and I also have opened up my own clothes closet to help the people in need. It's pretty successful. I help with the people at the homeless shelter and the girls at the rehab. I currently volunteer at the homeless shelter as well, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations on 18 months. That's great.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ashley Swinehart, 518 and a half Fair Avenue Northeast, New Philly. I am actually a previous employee of the homeless shelter. The shelter, wherever it may be, was home to me. It taught me humility. I actually just got out of River Haven. I have 6 months clean and sober. And so I hope that someday I can be back at Friends of the Homeless. And my whole heart belongs there. And I know that a lot of other people do too. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your 6 months as well. Anyone else wishing to address council?
I'm in support of the homeless shelter.
What is your name, ma'am?
I am,
State your name and address, please.
Susan Bame, 341 East High Avenue, New Philadelphia, Ohio.
Thank you.
I'm only one block that I live personally from the homeless shelter. I have never once had any trouble there. And the people that have come by that I've talked to in the summer, when you're out and you just talk to, some of them are homeless and they're just on their way. And I do want you to know that I also have another property there with rooms for rent, and some of the homeless have been there after they've been employed somewhere else for a year. And they are the most humble people. they humbled me because they are just so happy to have something over their head. And all they have is one room. I only have rooms for one person. And they are just so happy to be there. I just thought they just needed something over their head. And they're more decent than the people that I get in there that don't pay their rent and walk out. You know, they've never been homeless, but they treat people not right. And all the people from the homeless shelter are kind and they're loving and they've been down and out. And I also want you to ask yourself, when you started out, and this is kind of a story, my story, at 18 and then 20 with 2 children, and the Timken company lays you off. My husband worked there. He got laid off. That was the first time in their history they ever laid off. And think of your children if you weren't alive to help them. I had family that helped us. But these people that I've been in contact, most of them don't even have family here, anywhere close or even have any left. And I'm just saying your children and I could have been the homeless one because someone didn't help me in our lovely community. And I've never seen such, giving that this community does. I want to thank all of you for making it a good place for everybody. But I do want you to think of where you might have been or where your families were if you horrifically both had died, husband and wife. We've had that in the community, Dover. And if there wasn't anybody there for them and they get laid off, like's probably going to happen in Dover when that company shuts down and they're taking their work to Mexico. And I'm just saying, if they didn't have family, 63% of the people in the world live paycheck to paycheck. And I did too at age 20, when I had the 2 children. And if my father and mother weren't able to help me, we would have been on the street just because Timken's laid off. And you've heard horrific stories from your friends and their family, or like he says, we're not all saints. Not everybody can be, have the strength to lift themselves up and all that. So I just want you to think about that, if anybody that's against it, that how humble these people are, and they need all our help we can give them.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. I am Ben Lippert, 126 22nd Street Southeast. Before I share my remarks, I just want to pass this around. You can all take a look. I didn't have enough copies for all of you. I apologize. But those are the signatures from the residents of New Philadelphia. I'll get back to my microphone. From the residents of New Philadelphia who signed our change.org petition in favor of our homeless shelter. What I want to really stress about that is when we sent that petition out asking for community support, I was humbly hoping that we would get maybe 200 people to sign this petition. If we're really lucky before we get to council, we had 500 people sign in our first night. First night, it was public. That's great news, isn't it? Now, not everyone was a resident of Tuscarawas County. People did send it out. That's the internet for you. But we do have on that list for you 200 people from New Philadelphia who signed that. That's greater than any petition you've had in front of you or anything like that. You can see the community support for the homeless shelter is strong, and it is here. And somebody asked me in 1 week. Yeah, in 1 week we have that. The community support is strong. It's right here tonight. Somebody asked me a few months ago what the community support for the homeless shelter looks like, and you are seeing it right here, alive in action. And we're so grateful for it. But my remarks today focus on the fact that I'm a little sad for you guys as city leaders right now, because this week should be like an awesome week. This should be a week where our city's stealing headlines, that the city of New Philadelphia came behind this idea for this homeless shelter. They found room at the inn for the homeless people in our community. Everyone stepped up and made it happening, but we're not sharing that headline tonight. And many of us are asking why. Why isn't that happening? We need to make it happen. Because this is, Friends of the Homeless is not just something 12 people on a board sit around and support. It is something our churches in Tuscarawas County support. Almost every single pastor I've talked to in this area, I'm the pastor of Shenbrun Meridian, by the way, is in support of this, which is crazy. If you've talked to our pastors in this county, we're opinionated on everything, aren't we? We don't read from the same Bible every Sunday morning. We start worship at different times, but our conservative churches agree about this. Our liberal churches agree about this, and our moderate churches agree about this. They all want to see this get done. They are all in support of it. So we just need to come together and make it happen. And we need you. We need you as our leaders to show us how this gets done. So I guess I end just asking with some questions, because I think I've been working with the House of Hope, but I'm not an official representative. So I was just wondering if we could get some clarity on where the process is right now with the proposed location we have, because we've heard mixed reports about there is something going in front of the zoning board tomorrow, there isn't. So could somebody please clear that up?
Zoning is not meeting until January, Ben.
No, it meets tomorrow.
Oh, zone, I was thinking
But
planning.
there's no variance to be heard from the,
I'm sorry, Ryan, could you say that louder?
there is no, you're not on the agenda.
I thought it was. I misunderstood. Were we on the previous agenda?
When we paid our, December 1st, when we paid our $35, they said we were gonna have a meeting December 13th, and it was gonna be at 5 o'clock, and that's where we were gonna have to be, and then, Mr. Joshua Mathias called me on Thursday and said, no, that's the zoning board of appeals, you have to go to the council, and then, that's why I called Mr. Kemp and said, we're gonna have a second, fourth Monday, and the next meeting is the day after Christmas, and they're doing their year-end budget, and it'd be better to come tonight. They just told me, we paid the $35 December 1st, and they told us it'd be December 13th at 5 o'clock. That's why we're hurrying to get everything done, and they called me Thursday and said, no, it has to be. And brought up to council, then, I guess, I don't know, Mr. Mathias, Joshua Mathias is no relation of mine, but I've known him ever since he's been a little boy. He's a good young man. He took Mike Scolati's job here. And he just said that then they handed off, from what they hear from us tonight, to Cheryl Ramos. Where is Cheryl at? Yeah, there's Cheryl. Cheryl, we're back here. So that's what Joshua Mathias told us. I told our board. And then Cheryl Ramos, I guess, if that's the case, this is what Joshua Mathias told me, our zoning gentleman for New Philadelphia, and said then it goes to the planning commission. The planning commission then looks at it, and then they put a letter out for 90 days on who is opposed to amend the zoning in this residential area where it's really 3.5 to 4 acres, and we don't know, but we're surveying it off. We think there's maybe an acre and 2/10 in the floodplain, but we know we're paying Mr. and Mrs. Dementio for whatever it is. We're still buying it, and then they said after 90 days, and they hear everything, then I guess the planning commission gives it back to the council, which is you folks, and you vote on it if we're allowed to amend the residential zoning, so we can then buy the property and go from there, but I don't know any different than that.
That would, wait a minute, Cheryl, that would be my call as council chairman. I do the assignments, and, after hearing tonight, my goal is to assign it to Mrs. Ramos's Committee of Zoning and Annexation to.
But I'm hearing two different things.
It's gotta go before planning commission before.
Right, I'm hearing a zoning variance on the a conditional use in a residential area. I'm hearing that, and I'm hearing amending the zoning, a residential zoning code, and that would be for every residential area in the city. So I'm hearing two different things. So if you only want, okay, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if you only want a different zoning for that Beaver Creek, then that would be an appeals, right, a conditional use?
No, you're incorrect.
Okay.
It's not heard at that stage. There's no parcel, no thing that gives it any variance request in the residential. There's no conditional use. So again, goes to council, you have to change ordinance then.
Change the zoning for
Right.
residential for the whole city,
Correct, you have to put that in there, correct.
for the whole city.
No residential
not
area
just one
would it be
area.
approved on, none.
I think Mr. Our law director can expound on some of that.
I don't believe it's a permitted use or conditional use in residential, and it would require modifying the current.
Excuse me, Mr. P, could you speak into your microphone, please?
Yeah, it doesn't magnify, so I'll just
Oh, okay.
speak up. He's quiet. Captain Rossi to stay.
Hey,
Oh,
Chief Perry.
Captain Ross?
Ross,
Rossi?
don't leave yet. No.
The process for amending the zoning in the city is outlined in codified ordinance 1151.01, and it spells it all out. It says that either on a petition of the property owner, recommendation of the planning commission, or on its own initiative, council can change the zoning requirements. And that's the process that it would have to take. So council could, on its own initiative, if the president assigns it to Ms. Ramos' committee, take that up, and those would be the proper steps.
So we would go, we would need Mr. D'Amato's signature, some approval from the planning commission, and then it would go to you?
There's three different.
There's three different ways, right?
The easiest way would be for President Kemp to simply assign this issue to a committee to be considered. And then thereafter, the committee makes a recommendation as to whether or not the variance should be granted or the ordinance modified.
That would be my recommendation as well.
Yeah. So
And-
that would be, the question would then be for my committee, is changing the residential zoning for the whole city.
This section. This
We,
section.
I don't think we can do just sections. It has to be for
You
everybody,
would have to
right?
modify the residential.
The whole
The
residential.
residential, which would cover residential for the whole city.
But I think that's something on a committee we need to take a look at. And so I would like
Yeah,
to,
or a further amendment could take place. And this council could amend the codified ordinances to permit a modification for residential zoning only for this section.
I'm
The
not
beauty,
sure
the
that
beauty
we
of
can
this
do
body
that.
is that you can amend or modify
Right.
codified ordinances upon vote. So if you determine that this area and this property is a good location for the construction of this homeless shelter, nothing prevents you from then considering a further amendment or modification to the ordinances that says sections labeled, this section of residential housing can be amended, but it doesn't affect the remaining residential sections of New Philadelphia. And Mr. Fate can work with you to make sure that that is ushered through if you believe that is the most logical step to take, which I would tend to say it is.
all right, thank you, Mr. Fair. So I would like to, Cheryl, I'd like you to take this into your committee and
Okay,
take the further steps to move forward.
okay.
So I thank you all for coming tonight. So it has been assigned to Mrs. Ramos's committee. Mr., yes, Mr. Fate.
I want to make sure everybody else had spoken, that nobody else
Yeah.
had anything they wanted to say. All right, I just wanted to add.
Okay.
I just wanted to say
Again,
something.
thank you.
I
No,
wanna-
we got one more.
I want to say something.
Okay.
Ask some questions.
Matt Ritzert, 213 Lloyd Street, Dover. I'm a volunteer at the homeless shelter. Just started this past summer helping out at the shelter. And what I have seen on my days there is a family atmosphere. I see guests doing chores. I see guests coming to work, leaving to go to jobs. I see children coming home from school. I see guests receiving occupational therapy. I see guests working with the staff to find permanent housing. And again, I see a family atmosphere with people trying to help each other out. I thank you tonight for clarifying this process and removing the obstacles and removing the barriers to make this happen, because we have a responsibility and we have a commitment to these people. There was once a priest named Alberto Hurtado. He drove around in an old pickup truck in the streets of Chile, or Santiago in Chile. He organized a homeless shelter. And he drove around in his truck looking for people who did not have a place to stay. He's quoted as saying, "Christ roams the streets." In the person of so many of the suffering poor, Christ is without a home. We have a responsibility to love our neighbor, to follow the example of Father Hurtado. Let us not turn away the homeless from New Philadelphia. Let us not turn Christ away. It's time to make a commitment to support a new shelter in New Philadelphia, and thank you for putting that process, or allowing us to have a process to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Fate. Oh,
I think she has.
No, go ahead. I want to wait till everybody was finished.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Aaron Tharp, 165 Herbert Road, Sherridsville. What I would like to see involved is the individuals who feel they're going to be impacted with the new facility where it belongs. I personally have been around the homeless shelter a small amount, and I would have no problems having it built near my home. But I understand that the individuals that would be affected would probably like to be involved. And I don't know if the facility can speak with those individuals in regards to landscaping. There was a mention of a side road that would reduce the traffic. You know, if there is a way to get this accomplished at this location by working with those residents who are concerned that this is going to be built there, is that, you know, can that happen? So that they can feel better about this going forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, yes, ma'am.
But I do want to answer the
Your
gentleman.
Name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Connie Clark, 6326 State Route 39, New Philadelphia. I wanted to answer the gentleman who said he lived nearby and wondered what happened with the other properties. 5 of those were in Dover. And when we talked with Dover, who welcomed us, by the way, they're not available. So 5 went out the window right away. I just felt you deserved an answer to that because no one else did. So that was all I wanted to say.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Fate.
Thanks. The fire chief is here. The fire chief had expressed to me some concerns about the ability to service that area. And Chief, I wonder if you could address that.
Do you mean as far as?
You had indicated about the truck being able to get back there or something along those lines?
Yeah, and I'm sure you're gonna do this. It needs to, the aisleway into the driveway into the facility certainly needs to be large enough to handle our fire equipment, our ladder truck, our engine to get in there. I haven't seen the plans, I'm not familiar, but I'm guessing it's more than a single story. I would assume.
There's no plans yet.
Okay.
You buy the property first, and you figure out how to build it, we have some ideas, but.
We're gonna make the
Correct.
road whatever the city of New Philly says.
Yeah, as long as it meets the city's.
Well, Mr. Damatio said he would give us that access to widen the road to make it there, plus where the on Beaver Avenue, there's an undeveloped road that where
Mhm.
Beaver Creek, it goes into the creek right there, and we plan on, that's right beside the church, and we're gonna develop that so we don't have to go across from East Elementary School and go in that way, and there's city fire hydrant right there, so we can come in right off of 39 and don't have to go
Sure.
across from East Elementary School and cause problems to any of the residents.
As long as the exit aisleway is built to the specifications of the city street, it's not a problem.
We'll do that, definitely.
Questions?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming in and sharing your stories. And I just want to state some concerns that I have. I applaud what you folks do. I am thankful for what you do. I would want something like that if something like that befell my family or befell friends of mine. Mother Teresa was famous for quoting Matthew 25, verse 40. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. I too, like Mr. Farrell, was born and raised in this community and care deeply for it. Nobody here thinks that what you folks do is not worthwhile. Nobody here has a problem with your residents. And we're grateful and thankful for what you do. I oversee the prosecution of 3,500 criminal cases a year, more than any other prosecutor in the county does. My concern is not for your residents. My concern is for the people that get turned away and where they end up. I had the police chief give me a list of some of the things that were flagged at the homeless shelter. And as you indicated, you're turning away people that have violent offenses, sex offenses, things of that nature. Do you keep track of how many you turn away and why? Do you provide those people with the services that they need or the transportation to someplace where they could get the help that they need? Do you inform law enforcement, hey, we had to turn this guy away and here's why, so that we are aware that these people are unfortunately sometimes end up on our streets? And then I see them in the criminal realm. And so I'm not worried about the people at your shelter. I'm not worried about anything that you are doing at the shelter. I'm worried about the people that are turned away and where they end up, and whether or not they remain in Tuscarawas County. Captain Rossi shared with me something that at a meeting earlier this year that was very concerning to me. He indicated that, well, I'm going to have him address that. We had a property review committee meeting, and he had talked to us about where there was a meth house, I believe it was, that several residents were living there. And could you address that? Do you recall what I'm talking about, Captain Rossi? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't talk to you about it beforehand.
The one with the attic?
Yes.
Why don't you get the microphone, Chief Rossi, there.
We have numerous properties around town where, for lack of a better word, non-resident, transient people end up. A lot of times they're drug flop houses. We have one that comes to mind that I think Mr. Fate's referring to, where it was an apartment. It's a one-bedroom apartment. There were 6 people living in it, including one individual who was living in an unimproved attic, literally sleeping amongst the insulation. Numerous calls to service there, been there numerous times with the squad for ODs, and all but one person there was the resident. Several months ago, we actually had an OD where a female was located not too far from that apartment, deceased on the sidewalk from an overdose. I think and I agree with Mr. Fate, nobody in the safety services are concerned about your shelter or your individuals that reside there. We commend you for what you do. Every time I've been to the shelter, I've been received with open arms. Your staff are pleasant. It's the people that get turned away that we end up dealing with repeatedly, time and time again. It seems like when they come here with hopes of getting in, they'll only be turned away. Those are the individuals we deal with on a daily basis. Thank you.
Captain Ross, on that particular occasion, you had inquired about the ones from out of state, why they were there, and what did they tell you?
I've had numerous occasions to interact with subjects that we end up arresting for property crimes or drugs or theft. One individual appeared to have just came from prison. I met him his first weeks here. This was about 1.5 years ago. He claimed he was from San Diego, California. Asked him how did he end up in New Philadelphia. He said his homeless coalition in California and San Diego sent him to New Philadelphia because of our homeless shelter. I can only imagine with his lengthy criminal history that he was turned away. It was a good 6 to 8 month process where he repeatedly was a guest in our facility, in the county facility, for numerous crimes. When I'm only assuming he's moved on. That's just one of numerous stories that I can recount.
If I could address just a couple of issues, Mr. Fate, that you brought up. I can't address all of them. There are probably individuals here who are better suited to address some of those with respect to what do they do with individuals who are turned away, or are they transported to other facilities who could better treat them. That being said, the New Philadelphia Police Department is aware of who is turned away because the New Philadelphia Police Department runs the background checks. Anyone who fails that background check because they have a violent criminal history or they are a sexual offender is not going to be permitted access to our shelter. So when you ask the question, how do we know who is being turned away? Well, we know because we work with the New Philadelphia Police Department on having those background checks run. Now, I'll let Calvin or someone else talk about what happens when those individuals are turned away. However, for every example of someone who seeks out this shelter and who isn't permitted access, and they're from out of town or out of state, I think that those examples pale in comparison to the success stories of local residents who have utilized this shelter for good. So there will always be examples of when things don't go right. It's happened in my life. I'm sure it's happened in all of your lives. You cannot allow those examples to color this project in a negative fashion. It's unfair, it's illogical, and it should not happen. Yes, Councilwoman.
I understood the chief to say they run the background checks, but the shelter decides who stays and who doesn't.
Yes, but everyone knows, and if they didn't know before, they know now, that if in that background check there is violent criminal history, felonies of a criminal or of a violent nature, or arson, or a sexual-oriented offense, they're not getting in.
And the shelter makes that decision. They run the background.
Yeah, we've
And
made that as our
you
policy, not
guys
to
make
allow
that
those
decision.
individuals with those offenses into our shelter.
Convictions,
which is probably one of
right?
the reasons it's described as a family
Convictions,
amnesty.
right? Not charges, convictions,
That's correct.
correct?
Correct.
I would like to add something here, that's,
You wanna go up to the mic, please?
Steve, you gotta go up to the mic, Steve.
Steve Maston, 1210 Winkler Drive, Dover, Ohio. We already have a shelter here today. It exists today. Those people that are causing difficulties are going on today. The new location isn't going to change that. It's not going to make that worse or better. In fact, it's going to make it better because we can actually house more people and help more people. But it's not as if this is going to be a new, bigger problem, which is what I'm perceiving is being said here, because, oh my gosh, no, that's going to be a constant. That's just how this goes. We can't control that. We can just do the best we can in managing what comes to us and helping the people that we can. We are going to be able to take in more people, which is going to make, I think, actually some of this problem is going to get a little better. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Ramos.
Captain Rossi mentioned that the one gentleman said that he was told by the Homeless Coalition in San Diego to come here. So my question is this: do you guys advertise on a homeless coalition or a network that we have a shelter here and we might have availability?
No.
Not whatsoever.
No.
Is he truthful in saying that San Diego sent him here?
No, well, I'm asking if there's like a network.
The answer is no.
Obviously, there is one somehow, but you guys don't participate.
There's not. And
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I'm sorry to interrupt. We don't advertise. We don't have the budget to advertise. Our concern is not people in California. Our concern is not people in other parts of Ohio. Our concern are the residents in need in this county and surrounding counties who are trying to escape horrific situations. There's enough problems here. We can't address all of those issues in our own county and in this area. We feel for those people who are homeless in other parts of the country, but our focus is on our residents and providing to them the services that they need.
Question. I don't call it marketing, but is the Friends of the Homeless on like a list? If somebody's in prison, they gotta go, get out? Because I've heard that, so I just wanted to clear it up. But we're on a list of so many shelters, houses or whatever, that if somebody's just getting out of jail, there's a list that, well, they have one in New Philly, or they have one in Cleveland or whatever. Is there such a thing? Maybe the police chief, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. What I can only suspect, and this is just me, giving you my best guess as to what happens. Individuals in prison or in jail talk. They say, what are you going to do when you get out? Well, I have nowhere to go. Well, I've heard of a shelter in this community, or I've heard that you can go here and get help. I'm assuming that is what is happening. Is there some type of published list that we're aware of? No. But I'm assuming that it's well known among those circles that we provide valuable services to people in need. And when someone's trying to emerge from that circumstance and they have nowhere else to go, I'm assuming that they ask those around them, what should they do?
All right.
I just did a quick Google search. There are websites that list homeless shelters, and I haven't clicked on any yet to see if ours is on there, but.
It's not something you guys reach
It's not something that we've put out there.
Right.
It's the internet.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And they come up.
Yep,
And
makes sense.
we're one of those shelters.
I just didn't know if you guys knew of if
But
there
we
was.
do not advertise.
Right.
And we do not go into the other communities in a van and a bus and bring people to Tuscarawas
Right.
County. But when people get out of jail or prison, they're supposed to have a place that they have to go. And some of the folks that don't have a place to go choose a shelter.
Right.
Ours is a shelter they choose. For bad or for good, we have a really good reputation.
Which is why they know about us in San Diego.
All right, Mr. Ramos, another question.
I read on the couple letters I got that you guys accept abuse victims. So I'm wondering if you network with Harbor House and the other domestic violence programs that we have available in our community.
Yeah, yes, we do. And we also offer services on site
and we have a business contract with the Wellmore Center, which is a block away from the shelter. And we do our, as best we can to hook people up with services they need.
And
That's why we're there.
Pathway to Wellness is for the,
It's a long-term.
addiction, long-term
Long-term
addiction.
recovery, sober living house, 5 beds.
It's right around the corner right there.
We have one more question for Josh.
Josh, you indicated somebody here was going to be able to address what happens to the people that are turned away. Is there somebody that can address that issue?
Cal?
Yes.
Probably go to the Calvin.
Calvin, could-
Calvin White, 4347 Broad Run Dairy Road, Dover. I'm the executive director at the homeless shelter. I've been there for 12 years in February. What our policy is, when folks come in, and it's a balancing act all the way around. We do what we can. I'm responsible for the environment in the shelter. And when somebody misbehaves in the shelter, violates a major rule, we have to ask them to leave. Like was mentioned earlier, most often we have children in the shelter, and we need to protect the children and the families. When people leave the shelter, we make every effort we can to hook them up with another shelter in another county or another service if they can. Some of the people accept that, some of the people just leave.
Do you do that for the people that you turn away outright because their background checks don't work out, or are those people just turned loose on the streets?
I think the characterization that this shelter is turning people loose on the streets is a poor choice of words, Mr. Fate.
Well, let me
These are
rephrase it.
people who are already on the streets seeking shelter. So any insinuation that we're turning people loose on the streets, I think belies your position on this issue, and I think is unfair.
But is it,
I think he means
So-
turns away. They
Well,
can't
that's
come
not
in,
what-
turns away.
But that's not what he said. And words have meaning, and words are powerful. And so, Mr. Fate, if you think we're turning people loose on the streets, as you just indicated, then tell us that. We're not. We're providing shelter to individuals. Those who do not pass background checks are told they are not permitted access.
I still haven't got an answer to my question. What happens when those people that don't pass background checks are turned away? What do you do with them? And Chief, could you answer the question for me? Does the homeless shelter tell you who they turn away?
No.
Okay.
They fax a sheet here. My detectives do the background check and they fax it back. We are very open to working with the city, with the police department. We've had numerous meetings where you indicated support for the shelter. I've asked you to bring the drug dog into the shelter to check for drugs. That's never happened. We do the best we can, and I'm willing to do whatever we need to do to ensure the city, the police department, that we're doing everything we can to protect the city. I grew up in New Philadelphia. I don't want criminals running the streets of New Philadelphia either. We have a certain number of beds, and we can only take in 36 people. When they get released from prison and they come here, again, we give them numbers and addresses for other shelters around the state. But we can't provide transportation for those folks. We don't have the budget or the resources.
If Chief Goodwin would like us to contact the police department and provide the name of individuals who are turned away from the shelter for whatever reason, we'll be happy to do that.
I think that would be a good start.
Good.
I think that'd be great.
But we don't turn anybody loose on the streets.
Nonetheless,
Excuse me?
I said nonetheless, they do end up on our streets, as Captain
They're already
Rossi
on the
pointed
streets.
out.
They don't-
Yeah, but they don't
They're already
have-
on the streets, Mr. Fate, so your
Not-
characterization, again, is improper.
But were they drawn here by the promise of shelter and then turned away?
No, they weren't drawn here.
All right.
already have homeless people here, Mr. Bates. We already have them here.
Again, I'm not concerned about the homeless people that you're treating. I'm concerned about the ones with these criminal backgrounds. And I've also heard that, we turn them away if they're arson, violent offenses,
Sexual offenses.
That's
Sexual
not our problem,
offenses.
Mr. Fate.
That would probably.
Sexual offenses, violent
that would
offenses.
probably be like the law director's responsibility or the criminal court side, where they could be in jail longer for
So what?
Well,
what
trust
we
me,
will-
I'm having to deal with them, that's why
So
I'm
what we
asking.
will do to address your concern is that we will provide the name of all individuals who are turned away to Chief Goodwin. That will allay any fear that you may have then, Mr. Faith.
And
I think we're in a
the
work
other-
in
The other question I
process.
had was, I heard the reasons. If they have a felony drug conviction, are they turned away?
No.
Okay.
We get a state grant, and the conditions of that state grant, we're a low-barrier shelter, and we're not permitted to turn people away just because they have a drug issue.
I understand that.
We try
What
to
about
provide
drug-
services.
What about drug trafficking?
What-
If they have,
What's your question?
well, I'm asking, so you take people in
We
with
do not
felony?
traffic in drugs.
No, that's not what I'm asking. If they have been convicted of selling drugs, are they permitted in the shelter?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a nonviolent crime and it's not a sex crime.
And again, these are some of the people that we're trying to help. They've made some bad choices in their life. I've made bad choices. I've made changes. Many people here, I'm sure, could agree with that. You know, our approach to this is to help people and to make the city a good place to be. I don't understand the resistance.
Well, I think tonight's a good starting point. We got a lot of work to do. We've assigned it to a committee, and again, I applaud you folks for coming and bringing your concerns to council meeting, and I'm sure I'd like to see all of you back when we have our,
When will
Mr.
that
Ramos.
meeting be? Sorry, Don.
Pardon?
When will that next committee, or does that have to be assigned?
It's assigned to me and I will set the meeting.
It's probably
And that will
gonna
be publicized.
be, probably gonna be in January. I mean, we're,
And then zoning and annexation?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it would be prior to our council meeting, it would be set up at a time that would be notified the public to be there. All right, again, thank you, folks.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Council. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Move on to council comments. December 26th is the day after Christmas. Would anybody that would like to change that meeting that week? We could do it later in the week instead of doing it the day after Christmas.
I'm going to be unavailable that week.
Either way, 26th or not. so. Kelly, you're not available that week at all. You could make the 26th either.
It doesn't, the 26th doesn't matter. The whole week I'm going to be gone.
What's other council members, do you want to meet the day after Christmas?
I would
or-
prefer to meet maybe on that Wednesday, if that works for everybody.
Yes.
Is it Thursday?
Mr.
You have to have
President,
it?
traditionally, it's been held on the Thursday,
That'd be fine.
28th, the 28th. Yeah.
Do you want to do?
Is the 28th, how about a Thursday, the 28th? Amy, that works. Dean?
I will be out of state, but I will be attending electronically.
Oh, okay.
28's fine with me.
28's fine? Mitch? Cheryl, 28th, any good for you?
Yeah, I think I'll be in town.
All right, so we'll do the 28th. We'll put that word out there. The next council meeting will be on the 28th at 7:30 PM. And if there's any other meetings prior to that.
Okay, we'll do that. When we, legislation, go ahead.
Legislation.
Or- Okay.
We still got some meetings to do.
Ordinance number 23. Okay.
Hold on.
If you can move out in the hallway, I mean, we still have some legislative work to do here to finish up this evening, so again, thank you for your, all right. Ms.
All right.
Ms.
Courtright.
Courtright.
Ordinance number 23, 2022, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of New Philadelphia, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Rickley,
Mr. President, I ask we suspend the rules for ordinance 23, 2022.
do I have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. Any questions by administration, council, roll call?
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mrs. May. Yes. Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer. Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Entertain a motion, Mr. Ricklake.
Mr. President, I ask that we pass ordinance 23, 2022.
Do I have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. Any comments by the public, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Ordinance 23, 2022 has been passed.
Ordinance
Close
number,
those.
Gotta keep them up.
Can't close those.
ordinance number 24, 2022, an ordinance by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, amending and adjusting the permanent appropriations ordinance for the year 2022 and declaring an emergency, first reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Rickley.
Mr. President, I ask that we suspend the rules for ordinance 24, 2022.
Do I have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
All right, rules have been
Yeah,
suspended.
yes. And I'm having a hard time hearing, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please move away from the meeting, they cannot hear. Ladies and gentlemen, please move away from the meeting, they cannot hear.
About time, someone did it.
All right, so rules have been suspended now. Mr. Rickley.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I ask that we pass ordinance 24, 2022.
Do I have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. In discussion by the community, administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, ordinance 24, 2022 has passed.
Resolution number 28, 2022, a resolution by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, adopting the Tuscarawas County 2022 Hazard Mitigation Plan as the official hazard mitigation plan of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, and declaring an emergency, third reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr.
I would
Holland.
move that Resolution 28, 2022 be adopted.
Do I have a second? Mr. Pace, thank you. All right, any discussion by community, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
All right, resolution 28, 2022 has passed.
Resolution number 34, 2022, a resolution by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, approving the Stark-Tuscarawas-Wayne Joint Solid Waste Management District's 2023 Solid Waste Management Plan update and declaring an emergency, third reading.
Is there any action been taken by council on this legislation tonight?
Third reading.
Third reading. Mrs. Ramos.
I move that, resolution 34, 2022 be passed.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Pace, thank you. In discussion by the community, administration, council, roll call.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
All right, resolution 34, 2022 has passed.
Resolution number 38, 2022, a resolution by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Grant County, Kansas, to sell the 2009 KME Aerial Cat 102-foot ladder tower and attached equipment at a cost of $299,000 to be deposited to the Capital Improvement Fund 420 for the fire department and declaring an emergency, first reading.
Is there any action been taken by council on this legislation tonight, Mr. Rickley?
Mr. President, we ask to suspend the rules for resolution 38, 2022.
Do I have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Mr. Rickley,
Mr. President, I ask we pass resolution 38, 2022.
do I have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. In discussion by community, Administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, resolution 38, 2022 has passed.
Resolution number 39, 2022, a resolution by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia, Ohio, authorizing the annexation of real properties located in Goshen Township, parcel numbers 25-01887-000 and 25-01989-000, owned by Lawfer Properties, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Hearing none, it will be held for a second reading at our next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Resolution number 40, 2022, a resolution indicating what services the City of New Philadelphia will provide to parcel number 25-01989-000 and 25-01887-000, located in Goshen Township, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, upon annexation into the City of New Philadelphia. First reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mrs. Ramos.
Mr. President, I move that Resolution 40, 2022, the rules be suspended.
Do I have a second? Mr. Alonso, thank you. Any discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Entertain a motion to pass resolution 40, 2022. Mrs. Ramos,
I move that we pass Resolution 40, 2022.
do I have a second? Ms. Alonso, thank you. All right, any discussion by the community, administration, council, roll call.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
All right, resolution 40, 2022 has passed.
All right, that concludes legislation for this evening, Mr. President.
Any old business to be brought before council tonight?
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to step out for just a moment. If I might, for the health report.
Oh, yes.
The health board will be meeting this Wednesday at 11:30 at the Venue Restaurant, and the public is invited. And also on the Safety, Health, and Service Committee, I have no formal report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holland. All right, any new business?
Merry Christmas to everyone.
That was my next. Thank you, Santa. You beat me to it.
Thank you, Santa.
Like I said, I just hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, and we'll see everybody on the 28th.
28.
And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Holland.
9:27.
9:27.
I tried to get you in there, Amy.